What we want to look at is how the media portrays Muslim men, non-Muslim men from different backgrounds, faiths and cultures, and see what kind of treatment they get and how their portrayal is. Is there a general way that men are portrayed, whether they're Muslim or not Muslim?
Oh yeah, definitely. I think there's a reoccurring theme of how men are being portrayed. Not equally, number one. Obviously, people from different ethnicity, different backgrounds have a higher priority. You know, they get the bigger roles in movies. They get the better, everything really. For example, the cliche how in a horror film or even in any film, the first one to die is a black male. And we always see that happening. Why can't the black male take the lead role and everyone else, just be that supporting actor?
You mean you're talking about stereotypes?
Stereotypes, exactly. And we just have to live with it.
There's so many movies where, for example, it's based in the Middle East, and you always have the good guys with the American accent, and you have the bad guys with the typical Middle Eastern accent. But you think, hold on, we're in the Middle East. How is this working out?
And they make them sound evil. Because in Hollywood you can do anything, and when spoken, Arabic sounds, actually, to me personally, and I know there's a few other people who feel the same way, sounds very nice and soothing to the ears, but they make it sound so phlegmy, like all that stuff. No offense, but it's not right. It's purposely done because these major productions, film productions, they know exactly what they're doing. The lighting has to be great. The script has to be perfect. You have to show them in a certain angle because you're trying to vilify a certain group or people or what have you, and you're showing others in a good light, and that's how men are being portrayed.
I think it reflects like the political climate at the time of the world. So Hollywood usually will, like in Rocky IV, right? You have Rocky Balboa as Ivan Drago, the guy from Russia. And then it starts off with like an American glove and a Russian glove. So it's like it's America versus Russia, because at that time there was that friction between those two countries. Whereas after 9/11, for example, the new scapegoat for the Western world, let's say, was Muslims and Islam and the people with the beards and living in that part of the world. So a lot of these movies then come out afterwards and in and around that time, where the main enemy, shall we say, is someone from that part of the world. And I think what's interesting is if you go back a few decades and you look at the movies from the 70s or even the 80s, and you realize that wasn't the case necessarily. And I'm talking now more about Muslim men, as in Rambo, and in Rambo 2 or 3, I can't remember which one, where Rambo goes into Afghanistan and he's with the rebels, right? And they work together. He's one of them, and he and at that time
was he against the Russians?
I really can't remember.
Probably because the Cold War was happening at that time.
He would speak like Arabic with them, right? And they would say like Inshallah and all these things, and like they showed those men in a good light.
Yeah.
Whereas
a few decades later,
completely changed.
Yeah.
Especially like 9/11 really changed the climate of the world, and that's manifested in media, and it's really hit hard on Muslim men.
No, 100%. I think he's talking about, first about Rambo and how they were portraying the Russian actor, that character, in a very rigid way. You weren't able to relate to him, but you were able to relate to the protagonist at the time, who was emotional, he was down to earth, and you saw him go through hardships, and you were like, oh, I want him to win, he's the underdog. And that's the power of the media. And men, unfortunately, in my opinion, are being portrayed to just be crazy about women, just to chase all these women, the hottest chick that there is, and they will go out of their way, and they will commit anything necessary to get their end goal. And their goal is, instead of being something righteous and pure, it's a woman, right? At the end of the day, the lady in red. And that's who they're chasing, and that's what we keep seeing day in and day out.
Would you say there's an objectification of both men and women in this situation?
Yeah, of course there is, because then again we see all these actors, they have to be built. You see all these I don't want to name any names, but they're all out there. Just pick up any movie or just go to the cinema. You'll see them. They're fit as anything. It's fake. You know, they've used steroids many times.
Isn't that for the role of the movie though? They want someone either small or big. I mean, is that such a bad thing?
Not necessarily. I mean, why do they have to all have six-pack abs? I mean, that's not realistic.
If the guy's Hercules, then he can't be skinny.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Sometimes the person is slim. Sometimes he's short. Sometimes.
Because it draws attraction. It draws attraction. You don't want to sit there and watch somebody who doesn't look good, because that person will not be able to take you into that role, that character. Same with women; they're objectified. They wear as less as possible, so that us men can just be glued to the TV and be like, "Wow, she's really pretty. She's this and she's that." It's purposely done, you know. And as far as Muslim men are concerned, I'm just really not happy with the way that Islam and Muslim men are being portrayed in the media, because one, it's not enough, and whatever representation that they are getting, it's very bad. It's poorly managed. It's basically ISIS. It's basically these wannabe who consider themselves to be scholars and what have you. But like I said in a previous show, that you just don't want to even look at them, and they talk really poorly. They don't know how to portray the religion properly, yet they're the ones who's constantly being invited on these news channels and shows to explain Islam, when they themselves have weird understanding of Islam. And so not only are we getting a very limited portrayal in the media, but we're being represented very poorly. And that is a reoccurring thing that I've seen. And
I mean, the media isn't just movies, right? Like YouTube. Right now, you can create your own media, and the main, let's say, the most famous Muslim speakers on YouTube are usually those ones with hate speech, right? On either side, on different sects of Islam. They're the ones who get a lot of views and a lot of followers.
That's the hot topics, the controversial stuff.
And they always send videos across to each other. And it's just Muslims, like they're destroying themselves even. Yeah. So people like this fitna, that's happening. People are drawn to see when there's a fight at school, everyone ran, fight, and people watched it and recorded it. No one tries to stop it. The guy who stops it gets beaten up, right? And now they're doing it to their own selves. They're victims of their own actions as well. So we can't always blame the other, right?
Oh, no, and it's down to ignorance, isn't it? I mean, they don't know what they're doing. Maybe they do, but then that means they may have a hidden agenda, that they're not really wanting to, show some Muslims in good light. Maybe they are.
But why should we expect them to show Muslims in a good light? I mean, considering that this is the history of these organizations, these industries, because from what I've seen of the community is that this channel is not representing Islam properly, this channel is not doing it. But I feel like people often feel to ask, why should I expect this channel to do it for me? Why don't I actually go out there and represent Islam? In the way it should be represented. I mean, how many of us, at least as followers of the school of thought of the Ahlul Bayt, how many of us are there, and how many of us actually go out of our way to say, you know what, I'm going to study, I'm going to get into a field of work that's actually going to make a direct impact onto what I'm doing. Am I really just going to live a ritualistic life where I'm just going to do my 5-time prayers, go to the Islamic center, and then go to my field of work and complain that I'm not being represented properly? Is that really how it's supposed to work?
No, of course not. I mean, especially the way that you've outlined it. I don't know what the root cause is. I'm just going to say it's lack of confidence, it's lack of belief in yourself, it's laziness, it's procrastination, it's all these things put into one that stop us from actually doing what we can. Like you said, go and educate yourself in a particular field where there's a lack of Muslims in. It's easier said than done. It's very hard to do that, and the economical situation where it's a dog-eat-dog-out world out there. You just want to make enough money to survive and for your family to survive.
I mean, there's nothing wrong with making a living, because at the end of the day, that's part of being a human being. And
But it doesn't give you the flexibility or the luxury to go and study what you want to study, for example.
I think in our society it does, because it's not like there's a lack of options. It's just that I'm going to follow this because my parents want me to become a doctor, a lawyer, an engineer. Not that I think anything is wrong with these fields in and of themselves. I think they're amazing if people were to do them for the sake of Islam. But I feel like there's not this holistic, approach towards Islam. I'm going to do this to get the money, and then I'm going to do the part-time, go to the Husseini or whatever it is, and they're not combined properly.
It's not the core of their lives, and this comes from like back in the day in the Christian time, medieval Europe. In Christian nations, you belong to Christendom, and that was your sole like identity, really the core of it. Likewise, in certain Muslim nations right now, more in the modern world, religion's become more of an issue between you and your Lord. It's after Protestantism and reason is what rules the land. So the way people see religion now is not like they used to see it. Now, when a traditional Muslim family is integrating with those families or those people who don't understand this, of course they're not going to understand this because they don't see how can it be so important to them that it's a sole part of their identity. So when we are so offended by what's on TV, so maybe some people don't mind that the Prophet Jesus alayhi salam is drawn on shows like South Park and he's made into this joke and the clown really, and some people might find that funny and they don't understand why we don't accept for our Prophet to be manifested in drawings or in media, even when it comes to our own movies that we make. So the message or the latest movie made about the Prophet in Iran, they didn't show his face, right? And although, of course, maybe that's not going to allow you to come close to the character and the emotion on the face, sure, but we are keeping that sanctity of our Prophet, that you don't think of any actor's face when you're thinking of the Prophet. Yeah. So I always think of this amazing figure, but I can't put a face to him, and that's how it's supposed to be. It has to remain sanctified. And that's our tradition. Our tradition is one of sacredness, of sanctity, right? And we don't want to allow dirt into that. So we want to protect that. So of course we're going to keep protesting against when things are misrepresentations on the media. After all, so that latest one, the housewives of ISIS, we should be doing something about that. We should air our concerns about that. We shouldn't take these things as a joke. I'm sure there are going to be repercussions for sisters who wear hijab out in the street, normal sisters, and people who watch this show who are uneducated. And this is unfortunate, but there are many people.
Yeah, so some of that ISIS stuff was funny though, the housewives. But I know what you're saying.
Even if it's funny, we shouldn't allow ourselves to take it as a joke. It shouldn't be lighthearted for us. We really no, don't take life so seriously, man. Lighten up, enjoy it.
But bro,
I'm not happy with that.
A lot of people will say, "But that's part of British culture." And if it is part of British culture, how do you find the balance between I'm a Muslim living in Britain?
This goes back to the whole freedom of expression argument. As in, like, how far can it go? Like when you hurt people, are you okay with that? With hurting people, being rude to people about what's the most important thing in their lives? I would venture to say that it's for me and for many other people that the Prophet of Islam is more important to me than my parents. And I wouldn't accept anyone to speak about my mother or my sister or my father, right? Yeah, how can I accept that when they make fun of my Prophet? It doesn't work.
But what obviously we were talking about the ISIS situation. I obviously abhor ISIS. So whenever I see someone either, making fun of it, I'm all right with that. However, I see your point where people, if they begin to generalize and think that Muslim women generally are treated like that, the way that they, showed on that skit, and if they're generalizing and if they're stereotyping, that's wrong. Because that's just, I don't know what the intention of the BBC was.
What are you feeding your brain?
They are, yeah.
So like all those movies, the Dictator, right? And there are all those different stereotypes that he has. And for example, why would you even sit down and want to watch that and allow that filth into your brain? Why? What is it that you're going to gain from it? Why do you take things? Fair enough, you take it lightheartedly, fine. You know what? To each their own. That's okay. But just understand that you are part of a wider problem of making fun of your own culture. It's disrespectful, and it again goes back to those values, that we don't have those values in us anymore. Where's the honor? Where's your honor? Do you not have any? Is that like non-existent in you anymore?
Guys, we've gone deep, but that's all we have time